In today's video, I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm just going to be talking while I'm working on in my sketchbook with some paints. I'm just trying out some kind of mixed media things, and I can guarantee it's going to look a mess, and I'm not worried about that because my goal is just to see how the materials perform together and what works and what doesn't. And I recently got some oil pastels, and I've been working with gouache, which is an opaque watercolor, and acrylics, and just seeing how they work together and how they work on paper. So I thought I would just do it in my sketchbook and see what happens. But in the meantime, I really wanted to talk about living a slower life and some of the challenges that come along with making the decision to live a slower life, and how to overcome those, and how, as I've more and more looked at my life and decided I don't want a frantic pace. I don't want to feel pressured. I don't want to feel like I'm missing out on things all the time, or a whole lot of other things, which I'll cover. But I thought I would just share kind of what I've been going through, and maybe you will get something out of it and enjoy it too. Please share what your experience is. I would love to hear from you. Over the last year or so, I've been gradually trying to slow my life down on purpose. I've had health problems that seriously need to be addressed. And so I've been working on making my life slower and making my choices more intentional and examining my life more. So today I'm going to be talking about some different aspects of choosing a slower life and how it's worked for me, and some of the challenges that I've had. And I hope that you'll be able to find something useful for you in it. As I navigate my journey towards living a more slow and thoughtful life, I naturally encounter challenges along the way, and you probably will too. If slowing down your life is a goal for you, it seems like it is for lots of people. And I think about how I grew up, which was on a farm on the prairies in Canada. And even though there were times when the family was extremely busy, life never really felt that way. And so nowadays, with the internet and social media being such a big feature in our everyday lives, it seems like things have cranked up a lot. Anyway, I think it's so easy to be caught up in all the busyness of life and kind of not notice as it's happening. So here are some of the obstacles that I personally face, and a few strategies that I've used or developed to try and overcome them. The first one is the difficulty letting go of the urge for busyness. When you've been busy a long time and everyone around you is super busy, it's hard to kind of separate yourself from that. You almost need to get away by yourself with a real solid time to think. And sometimes that means going away. Sometimes it just means closing the bedroom door, or just telling the people that you may live with or that you're involved with in any way, I'm unavailable for the next however long you think it might take. Perhaps, sometimes going for a walk is all you need. Other times it's like 2 weeks away or longer to just kind of reevaluate your life and priorities. There's actually no such word as priorities, because the word priority means the top one. I like to think of the essentials instead. And it's okay to have a priority, and it's important to know that what it is, but to evaluate what the essentials are in your life is really important. I find it challenging to let go of the need to feel constantly busy and productive, and to silence the voice in my head telling me I should be doing more. The culture of busyness is really strong, and it takes recognizing how it affects me, especially if I've been in a habit of being busy for a long time. But I have to actively resist this to be able to address this mindset, and also to just recognize it. Sometimes it comes with a feeling of guilt. It's like there's this little voice in your ear going, you should be doing more, you should be busier, you should be, maybe not busier, but you should be accomplishing more, and you should, it's really hard to, I have to stop and go, hold on a minute, what is actually the most important thing for me to do at this time, and how am I going to do that? Also, recognizing that urge for busyness in other people really helps as well. And resisting it when you're around them. It's almost like a cloud of busyness. And people, will say, "Oh, I'm so busy." It's like that's a badge of honor or something. And people have said to me, "Oh, I'm sure you're pretty busy." It's kind of funny because I have consciously become less busy, but I don't always want to say, "No, I'm not actually very busy," because I don't want to say, "Ask me to do anything. I'm sitting here waiting for you," because that's not the case. It's not how I want to live. Anyway, that's one of the challenges, resisting the pull or the push. I think it's more of a push of the culture to have to be busy all the time. And also the internalization of that culture, that I have to be busy because that whole cultural thing is out there that says I have to be busy all the time. And I don't want to be, because I have decided or recognized that there are things that are essential to me and I need to honor those. I have to remind myself of the importance of rest and reflection, because these things are really important. It's important to rest from working, but being attached to a phone or computer that won't let you rest means you'll be constantly busy. And I find I need to schedule regular downtime in my calendar almost, which, to be honest, I don't often do. I don't usually write it down. But if I want to prioritize activities such as reading, going for a walk, or creating something for the joy of creating that are by necessity relaxing and slow, it's important that I make time for those. And I need to actually see them as important. So if I were to schedule this, I could say, okay, after lunch, I am going to read for half an hour. Or this is still a little bit work related, but when I was writing novels, for one of my novels, I just went after dinner. My husband cleans up the kitchen, that's our deal, and I would just go write for an hour or an hour and a half. And that time was blocked off for that. Now I'm not writing so much, but I'm doing a lot of painting. And so now that I'm just kind of talking this through, I recognize that I need to actually make the time during the day, not just sort of loosey goosey, too flexible, but I could go, okay, after lunch, from 2 to 3:30 is my painting time every day. In my planner, I just write paint. And if I get to it, I get to it. Because sometimes other things take longer than I planned. But I'm seeing now, just talking this, that it would be a good idea to just say at 10 o'clock, I work on my website, and at 2 o'clock, I paint till 3:30, that sort of thing. Because then it's not only written down, but it becomes a habit. And those kind of habits are productive without a lot of pressure and without a lot of stuff hanging over your head, which is really important. That brings me to another issue, which is the struggle with time management. So, balancing my commitments and finding time for slow living activities can be a struggle. I have been pretty successful at tackling this problem by setting clear boundaries and saying no to unnecessary obligations. And knowing by doing that, just saying, that's something I don't want to do, or I don't have time to fit that in because these other things are more important. But for me, knowing what God has called me to do has made a huge difference to my ability to say no to things that will eat up my time. By decluttering my schedule and resisting the urge to say yes just because I'm able to do something, I have been able to create space for activities that align with my slow living values and my creative values and basically my life values. Like, things will always come up depending how involved you are in outside activities. There are always opportunities to do things, there are always fun things to do. But I find it, if I just say, okay, this is important to me, being able to have time to read. As I said, I'm not doing much writing these days, but I want to do a lot of reading at this stage in my life. And I feel very comfortable with that decision. I also want to do a lot of art creation because I'm on a continuum, I'll say, of developing a body of work and developing a style that I really love and I think others will love. More important that I love it and that I love doing it, and that I love it so much that I expect not to get bored with it. I've worked in watercolor for decades, and I have only in the last couple of years decided to branch into something else because I loved watercolor so much. I never sort of came to the end of it. So with canvas and acrylics, I feel the same. I want to work on it and develop the style and the look and something that excites me so much so that I don't have to come to the end of it. Okay, here's one that's a big one. That's feeling overwhelmed by digital distractions. The constant influx of notifications and digital distractions can hinder anyone's efforts to live mindfully and thoughtfully. I want to just stop for a minute and talk about thoughtfully. Mindfully is sort of, it's a trendy thing and it's a buzzword nowadays. I prefer the term thoughtfully. I get it that mindful means having your mind on what you're doing. But for me, I think thoughtfully is giving thought to what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Sure, having my mind on it while I'm doing it, but giving thought to that beforehand. Anyway, to address this issue of all the distractions that the digital world brings into our lives, I've had to establish specific time blocks dedicated to my work. Those are offline activities. I've never been, for example, a person that had the television on all the time. I'm very distracted by background noise, so I don't want to have noise coming at me. And that's been a saving grace for my sanity. But now I could have my iPad on and a video playing while I'm making supper. But I've decided not to do that because that's one of those offline activities that is worth paying attention to, because if you don't, you burn things. Sometimes I keep a book that I'm reading in the kitchen, because a lot of cooking is you put stuff on the stove or in the oven and whatever, and then you have to kind of wait, but you have to be there to keep an eye on it. And so I'll have a book and I'll read for 3 pages, and then I have to stir the soup or whatever. So disconnecting from screens allows me to expand my mind in other directions, and that would be through thinking, through observation, through reading. When I think back to times when no one had a phone in his or her pocket, what did people do before iPhones and computers? I'm old enough that I came along before they did. And so the phone was something on the wall or on a desk. He had one of them usually in the house, sometimes two. All it did was ring when somebody called you, or you picked it up, called somebody with it. It wasn't a constant distraction. It wasn't something that was always kind of in your face or calling to you. So, I've talked to people or heard other people say that they're trying to spend less time on screens. And I understand that, because if you're aware that you're spending too much time, then you need to kind of pay attention to that. I find with mine, I've never really been that attached to my phone. Having my phone with me wherever I go hasn't really been a big thing for me. I mean, I always take it with me. I don't feel the need to watch TikTok videos while I'm waiting for the doctor. In fact, I'll take a book because it's quiet and I don't have to plug into it. This is what I do. I think about things that don't require a screen, which, if you're out of the habit, is actually kind of hard. Like this spring, I decided I actually made a little list of things that I wanted to spend more time doing. One of them was visiting my kids and my grandkids, an hour and a half drive away, which isn't far, but it's into the city and it's not a fun drive because there's lots of traffic. And I live in a small town where it's quiet and I love my quiet life. But I want to see my children more. And my daughter has a new baby, and I want to see that little baby because she's going to grow up really fast. You know how many changes happen in the first year of a baby's life. With that list, reading more was one of those things. And I like to sew. And for a long time, I never sewed anything. And I thought, well, I like to sew. I like to make clothes for myself. I love clothes. So I like to, make something new is great. I also like the act of sewing, and it doesn't require any screens. It actually gives my brain a break. So I become unplugged on purpose. And another thing I did was move a big comfortable chair into my bedroom so that I can put my feet up on the end of the bed and read a book in a quiet space. There's only me and my husband living in our house, but sometimes he wants to watch TV and I don't, or he's buzzing around doing things, and I want peace and quiet. So we kind of have a deal. If I go in the bedroom and close the door, I want peace and quiet. And so, he's a very gentlemanly person, so he doesn't barge in. These kind of things are helping me to unplug. And I think also this is sort of a little known fact that I have found by researching adrenal fatigue problems and high cortisol problems. And that is hours and hours a day looking at screens actually increases the cortisol in your system, which is gives you sleep problems and a host of other things, which I won't go into because you can do your own research. So I would just recommend find other things that don't require a screen. Read a book instead, start a hobby, go for a walk, gym, take a class. There's lots out there. Okay, what about dealing with societal pressures in general? The culture often places emphasis on productivity and achievement, which seems like the antithesis of living at a slower pace. I've had to examine my own values and ask myself, is what I'm doing something I really value? Or has it been imposed by the culture as something we should all value? One of those things is watching the news or listening to the news or looking it up online. Years ago, I realized that I don't value knowing what's going on around the world at all times. That's something frequently I don't even want to know. And also, I've found that because the news system is about sensationalism and bad news and all the terrors and horrible things that are going on, I don't need that in my life and I don't want it. In order to cut that out, I just stopped watching the news. And this was like at least 15 years ago. Occasionally, if I'm in the car alone, I'm listening to a radio, which I don't very often do. I'll listen to the world news. That only happens a couple of times a year. Just being connected with social media, you find out what's going on. And my husband is a real news hound. So I told him years ago, I'm not watching the news anymore. If you find something I really need to know about, please tell me. If I don't need to know about it, don't tell me. I don't need to know the horrors of the world. I know that there's stuff going on, and that's enough because, I mean, really, I can't do anything about a war going on. I can't do anything about that except when I'm at church and they say we're collecting money for the missions that we work with there. Hey, there's something I can do something about. My point here is it really my value or is it the culture's value? And if you think about what's most important to you and what you want to spend most of your time on, that's your value. To deal with this pressure, I remind myself that my worth is not solely determined by my productivity. I am much more interested in pleasing God and spending time doing what He has called me to do at a pace that feels right for me. So I've been working on developing my painting style since last October or something, and this is June now. I'm only just starting to arrive there. I made it a goal to paint every day, and I painted almost every day. So in doing that at my pace, I feel like that's exactly where God wants me. I also consciously surround myself with friends and acquaintances who value a balanced and meaningful life. That kind of support's invaluable, since not exposing myself to the pressures of the culture through the company I keep, television shows or social media, etc., which I've already mentioned, that goes a long way to allowing me to live a calm, peaceful life. And a peaceful life is really important to me. And being calm is really important to me because I'm an empath and I tend to take on stuff and it tends to fragment my attention. And I've dealt with adrenal issues for several years. I'm very, very careful to guard my heart. So here's another one. Do you struggle with comparison and FOMO, fear of missing out? I have to work on this one. Social media can sure trigger feelings of comparison and fear of missing out, which is FOMO, FOMO, making it difficult to stay present and content. I appreciate that people on social media want to put their best face forward, and so do I. But it's tempting to look at someone else's life, their house, their travels, their clothes, and see myself as lacking or feel like I'm somehow missing out. The way I deal with this is by being selective about what I give my time to. I love home decor and lifestyle videos, but I try to see them as inspiration rather than comparing myself to what is portrayed. By limiting my time on social platforms and focusing on my own journey, appreciating where I am and how far I've come in realizing my own dreams, I dial down the impact
and the possible comparison issue and the FOMO. I recognize that I'm blessed by God exactly where I am, and I'm thankful for everything that includes. Okay, here's an issue that I think is something women have more so than most men I know, and that's feeling guilty. It's something women have almost been trained to feel. Occasionally, I feel guilt for taking time for myself and prioritizing slow living. But it never lasts because years ago, my aunt said to me, I learned never to let guilt be a motivator. Now, I'm not talking about if you are guilty of something, a misdemeanor or hurting somebody or whatever. It's just that those vague feelings of guilt when you do something for yourself, or you look after yourself, or you look after your own needs, or you pay attention to your own life. Women in Western culture, I think all over the world actually, are trained from birth to be the caretakers of everything. When you have children, of course, you have to be a caretaker. But what I'm talking about here is feeling guilty for reminding myself that self care and intentional living are essential for my well being and good health. By reframing self care as a necessary practice, not as a selfish act, it allows me to show up more fully for my work and for relationships with others. It's kind of like you put your own oxygen mask on first, because if you're always giving out, you will soon wear down. And it's really important to look after yourself and not feel guilty about it. Another problem is struggling with the fear of missing out on opportunities. It's something I face every day. I'm still in business, so embracing a slower pace can sometimes trigger fear of missing out on business opportunities. I try to counter this by focusing on the value of just being fully present and doing a really good job in my current endeavors. I'm trying to do a really good job of my YouTube videos, and I'm trying to do a really good job of my artwork. That helps me keep in mind that quantity isn't necessarily the goal, that quality is sometimes more important. Every opportunity that comes along isn't meant for me. I have to remind myself that by being intentional and aligning my choices with my values, I create a more fulfilling and purposeful path. But let's be real. Sometimes life gets crazy and it's hard to stay calm in the face of a lot of demands. At times like these, I try to remember that those periods are temporary and my natural style of life or state of being is at a slower pace. In a fast-paced world, it can be challenging to maintain deep and meaningful connections with others, especially if their choices keep them so busy they're frequently unavailable. I have a friend this is the case. I hesitate to call her and ask her if she's free for coffee or anything like that because she's committed herself to so many things that she's a good friend, has been for many, many years, but she's frequently unavailable. I just try to make a conscious effort to prioritize quality over quantity in my relationships. That means sometimes just keeping in touch, whether through a phone call, a text, or a coffee date. It also means planning definite get togethers. If I don't plan it, it probably won't happen. So the responsibility for maintaining relationships that are meaningful to me is mine. In this case, it's important for me to recognize which relationships mean the most and let go of some of the others that aren't working that well. Or just accept that those are the parameters of that relationship. Nobody's on call for everybody all the time. If you are, then we're doing it wrong, because that sort of flies in the face of living the slow life and saying no to things that aren't meaningful. But still, it can feel isolating when I feel like I'm the only one dedicated to slowing my life down. To overcome this, I try to find others who share similar values. Please take a moment and subscribe to my video if you enjoy this, and share it if you think it will bring value to someone else. Click the little bell because that gives you notifications when I have new videos. So I'd love it if you'd leave a comment and just tell me what your experience has been or is. And if you're kind of in the same space as I am, wanting to slow your life down and just simplify it so that you have more time for calm and peace and for doing things that you really love, then I'll see you next time.